bad spot, mister.
Ain't nobody doing that.
Yeah, see that's how you get that off of there. How's it going? How you doing? Want some cornbread? Yeah, there you go. Have some cornbread. Nah, I'm just kidding. You ain't gonna have my cornbread. You think about taking my cornbread? Part 2 of my killing spree gonna begin up here on this video right now. And this ain't even Facebook Live. But anyway, how you doing? My name is Ray Gibson. See, here in the 1920s, a loudmouth Harlem grifter like me and a no-nonsense guy like Claude Banks, Mr. Claude Banks, we're the type of guys who would, you would end up team up on a bootlegging mission to Mississippi that could bring us anything but them little medium bucks, you know what I'm saying? Yes. So, however, we run into some trouble when a crooked lawman hits us with a phony murder charge just because we black. You ain't ever seen a black man carry a pocket watch? Claude and I are given life sentences and are shipped off to jail, where we must think of a way to prove our innocence and avoid the brutal guards while battling our biggest enemies. I wonder who. So, while I'm sitting here eating my cornbread and telling y'all this story, because if you're in here, that means you're basically in this cafeteria where I'm eating the cornbread, which explains the cornbread. So you know how most buddy comedies are very much you putting your two funniest people together in a room and they both make each other laugh, they both try to out funny each other, and they both try to outwit each other? This ain't that type of buddy comedy. See, Life is the buddy comedy that marks the final film in the Eddie Murphy era of raunchy comedies for a while. And I say for a while, not by accident, but on purpose. Life does more than what we wanted to give as an Eddie Murphy comedy, but meets and exceeds what we know it to be as a prison drama. Yes, it does. We have received better prison dramas as a whole that release before and after. But this entry, while not great or horrible, is a decent buddy comedy and prison drama. Probably one of the most mid films I've ever seen. One of the most middle ground, neutral, mild films I've ever seen. Not bad or excellent. It's not necessarily average, but it's not necessarily solid, but it's basically average from front to back and center. Life is prone to come off as a biographical timeline that actually happened between two falsely convicted African American men. Why does it seem so real? Why does it seem like it's based on a true story? Because it still happens to people today. The story itself is nothing that we had not seen before, but of course, with Eddie Murphy making the creative decisions, we basically have sort of an all-star cast like he likes to do, according to as seen in his past films. So we got him, Martin Lawrence, Bernie Mac, Anthony Anderson, who actually made this cornbread. Shout out to Mr. Blackish, making some good old black cornbread. Bokeem Woodbine, Rick James, etc. Correction, a great all-star cast does not necessarily define the merit of a cinematic story or just how brilliant a comedy is. Of course, Eddie Murphy's gigantic chemistry with Martin Lawrence ain't up there with Arsenio Hall, and I know that sounds ironic because I just said gigantic, but you gotta be fancy with this type of stuff. Sometimes you got to do certain that you gotta be fancy with. But this is his second time working with Martin after Boomerang, which I love a lot more than this film. That's a wish fulfillment. That's a good wish fulfillment. The chemistry benefits more from a typical opposites attract dynamic rather than two of the funniest comedians in the business. Martin Lawrence's Claude Banks being the voice of reason, and Ray Gibson being the troublemaker, so-called fighting over some cornbread, and the black cat of this whole film makes for one heck of a tug-of-war. And by the way, this cornbread ain't something I picked up on my hands in the line. This is actually something that I picked. This is the type of cornbread I took the taste out the mouth from the boy that was trying to get it from me. So, my dominance ultimately leads to more and more danger, and it slowly rips the line between just another comedy and a gripping drama. The film is proficient at conveying a sense of negative space between Claude and I. And the wider this negative space grows, the wider the more space we place between each other, and the slower time moves, and the more desperate we become. And the greater the hopelessness we feel for the two leads as an audience, or that y'all as an audience feel about us. See, we are reminded that anyone can end up in prison when they are at the wrong place at the wrong time. But for the case of Claude and Ray, myself, Ray, it is much worse. We are not partners in crime. We are not friends. We are not criminals. And we are not colleagues. But we are black. And we look suspicious. And we don't dress alike. And our clothes are filthy. So what does that look like? In the end, though, the fight for freedom and justice turns into a self-service rather than a liability. We was the only people that could have brought ourselves out, and ultimately we could have been free men, and yet here we are. Me eating all the cornbread I want without having nobody ask me for this taste of cornbread. You want some cornbread? I'm from New York City. I'm from Harlem, okay? If you want to get some cornbread, you want to get some cornbread yourself, okay? This ain't Louisiana where you can just eat or be eaten by some cornbread. No, it ain't like that type of story. With the 51% on Rotten Tomatoes, life is not a fair attempt. Especially when it is not the Eddie Murphy film of a lifetime. But it offers a clean and campy approach to a typical Prohibition imprisonment plot and some decent chemistry between the two leads that serves more as pedestals rather than elevating pillars to the story. So like I said, it is the most mid thing you could ever see in a film, or it is the most middle ground thing you could ever see in the history of cinema, or in the history of comedies, or in the history of just Eddie Murphy content. So for that, I'll give it 6.6 out of 10, and that's all I have to say for today. And until next time, if you're thinking about screwing me over for some cornbread, there's gonna be consequences and repercussions.